I am Marwan Cameron, and this is the Conduit. All right, y'all. It is Tuesday. It is November 16th in Kitsap County. It's a beautiful day, actually, 47 degrees. No rain. I can appreciate that very much. I think we're tired of all the wet leaves. So it's pretty cool. But I got a special show for you today. I've got a special day for you today. So special, in fact, I'm not even wearing my bow tie, which is what I normally wear on Tuesdays. But, you know, I still have on my purple because that is important. But our podcast today is with the Kitsap Regional Library. So I'm super excited for that. This is the first time that they are on the show. So today we have Karina Wood and Priya Chari. They are adult service librarians at different regions or different library locations. So we're going to bring them forward and, you know, get to know them a little bit and learn more about the library. How are you fine folks doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Good day.
Awesome. All right. I want you to just hold 1 second before we really get into this conversation. Here we go. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. I don't even want to hear about the library yet. Why are you a librarian of all things? Because librarians are cool and people, you know, like, hey.
It's a tough question.
Question.
I think I'm a librarian because I love the randomness of working in a public library. You get all different kinds of questions and you get to work with all different kinds of people, and every day is different.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. I've heard both jokingly and seriously people saying like, oh, well, librarians are people who just never want to stop learning. And you can't really pick a topic, so you just want to be able to learn about all of the topics. And that is something that I take fully to heart. Like, it is the coolest thing to embark on a new learning journey with someone and like, oh, hey, I learned about car maintenance today, or oh, hey, I learned about ancient Rome today. It's really cool. Yeah.
Car maintenance. That seems really random. Like Rome, okay. Car maintenance?
We've had people come in and ask us the most random things that were so important to them. So it's just a really cool thing to be able to walk with them for a little bit, learn along with them, and say, hey, I learned something.
Yeah, we get questions that range from where is the restroom to how can I get a divorce in Reno?
What?
I know you've got some good ones, Priya.
Yeah, a couple of weeks back, I had someone ask me when time started being counted, and it took me a little while to figure out, like, how do I approach this? And really, they asked, like, when did our calendar start? Like January through December, Monday through Friday, the year 0 through the year 2021. And so that was a cool historical record-keeping journey as well. But you never really know that these questions are there until someone asks you.
I had somebody ask me if I could provide them with a list of all the books they had ever read.
Well, you know what? We have folks in the chat already. And so Bailey is asking, what's the best book you've read?
Well, it's an extremely subjective question, which I love. Karina,
fiction or nonfiction?
It's the best. So, you know, you could do one of each.
Okay. I've got mine. Okay. So in 5th grade, I read the book, The Phantom Toll Booth by Norton Juster, and it changed my life. It's technically a children's book, but it was the first book that sort of treated children's curiosity and different thinking about things like math and science and physics and art and the sky and weather, and treated it really seriously. So kids can be really curious about things in a very serious, scientific way that makes sense to them. It's a fantastic book. I would recommend all adults read it if you haven't already.
You're a born librarian.
Yeah. What do you think, Karina?
Oh, that is a really hard question. I think the best book I ever read is Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry, because it was I think the first book that made me understand the importance of community in a meaningful way.
All right. I guess for me, Stephen King was great escapism for me. So I'm a big fan of his work. It has some problems, but as a kid, it definitely transported you to another place. So I think he was a really good writer for young adults and teenagers. Pretty scary stuff too. And so the ask is to put it in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind, ladies, just putting those books in the chat, because your recommendations carry a lot of weight, right?
I would hope so. But also we fully understand that everyone's got their own interests, their own preferences. Maybe they don't even want to read a physical book. They want to listen to one. That's totally fine. So if anyone wants personalized recommendations, you know where to find us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think why that's a great question is, you as a librarian, you are exposed to a lot of different literature and books. And so your perspective is a little bit different. I've only read just a smidge of a few authors, right? And you're so vast in your exposure, which is really cool. So let's get into it a little bit. First off, well, tell us what libraries you work at. Where people
I work at the Paulsbo branch of Kitsap Regional Library.
Okay, where is that?
The Paulsbo branch, it's right near Coffee Oasis, you just off of Lincoln/Iverson.
Okay. And Priya, which one are you at?
Yeah, I'm at the downtown Bremerton branch. It's on 5th Street between Park and Pacific. We are about a 40-second walk from Gather Together, Grow Together.
That's what I'm talking about. That's a true story.
Nice.
Yeah, we're the big yellow building.
Yeah, and that building is it's like the TARDIS for all you Doctor Who fans. It's bigger on the inside, and it looks really cool. Like the old buildings. It's a great place to go in and get lost in a book. I think it's got a great library vibe. So yeah, definitely check it out for sure. Let's see, we got another question. Let's see, where am I at? I don't want to lose myself there. Okay, nope, we're good. All right, so yep, keep your questions coming if you have them. How do you feel about the book of all books?
I'm wondering if that's a reference to the Bible. I have heard that term used to refer to it, but I'm not sure. Karina, do you think that
No,
might be?
I think I'm going to need Bailey to help us out on that. That's a curveball question for me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bailey, are you referring to the Bible?
That was just the first connection I made. But yeah.
All right, so we're waiting on that. All right, so thank you for that. Paulsbo Library, the Bremerton Downtown Library. There's another library on Sylvan Way, which is right next to the post office. And that's my post office. So that's my library. So that's where me and my daughter go when we go to the library. Where are some other libraries that there's one in Silverdale, true?
There's one in Silverdale, and Silverdale is about ready to open up a brand new library that is going to be, they're partnering with the Central Kitsap administration folks, and that should be open in the new year sometime. And then we've also got a branch in Port Orchard, a branch in Manchester. Let's see if I can go from south to north. Port Orchard, Manchester, downtown Bremerton, Sylvan Way, Paulsbo, Little Boston, Kingston, Bainbridge. Did I get it, Priya? I think I'm missing one.
I think Silverdale counts that one as well. Yeah, we got
Silverdale.
9 total.
Yes, 9 branches.
I had no idea there were that many libraries. And of course, your regional library card is good at any library.
Yep, if you check a book out at the Paulsbo branch, you can return it at the downtown Bremerton branch. You can return it to any of the branches that work for you. We're all one big system, and we serve all 271,000 residents of Kitsap County.
One more question too. You said, I think Priya said, you can either read a book or there's audio books. So what are the different sources of medium now in the library? You know, for some of us that haven't been in a library in forever, you know, it's like, but what can I expect if I go into a library? Is it just a book, or is it audiobooks,
Yeah, things
VCR?
have changed. You know, you come in and you'll see, you know, books because it's what we specialize in, but we also have different formats of books. So we have audiobooks that you can check out on CD. Some people like to get those for long road trips in your car. We have audiobooks that you can download to your device. We also have ebooks that you can read on a device like a iPad or an e-reader or your phone. And then physical items that we have in our buildings as well, along with books and audio CDs. We have DVDs of a variety of movies and TV shows, documentaries, things like that. We've got music CDs that you can check out as well. Got magazines, video games. If you are interested in that, check those out for a week. Yep, for PlayStation, Nintendo, and Xbox, I believe.
Okay.
And then we also have computers that you can use to inside of our building. You either, if you have a library card, or if you don't, you can just get a guest pass, which is good for an hour. We've got newspapers. I'm trying to think. We've got Discover passes if you want to go visit.
Databases.
Yeah.
Okay.
Access to some pretty great databases. LinkedIn Learning is one that we're really proud of because you can log on and learn anything you want about any piece of software or really any topic, languages, music. And then we've also got a really great database called Data Axle. So if you want to do any kind of business research, if you want to find out who your competitors are or who your potential customers are, Data Axle is an undiscovered secret. And then if there's any nonprofits out there and you want to do some research about how to find grants, we've got a fantastic database called Foundation Directory Online, and the Pulsebo branch is the access point for that.
Okay. All right. This is all new stuff. You know, as one is talking and the other one isn't, maybe you type some of those in the chat. This is all news to me. So I'm like, I need to get on down there. The library is awesome. And this is free with membership, right?
Yeah, a lot of these stuff you don't even need to have a card for. So if you want to check items out to bring home with you, you do need a card. For some of our databases, you do need a card. But if you want to come in and use our computers, if you want to come in and read, if a lot of our databases you can access at home without a card as well. Card is super easy to use, super easy to get. It's free. You can sign up online. We try to make it as easy as possible for everyone.
Yeah, the theme song at the library is all of our resources are free.
$3.99, my favorite price. So what do you need to get a library card?
We would just ask for some form of photo ID, yep, and then some proof of address, and that can be either an ID that has your address on it, or a piece of mail, or a a bill that was emailed to you. If you don't have an address but you just use general delivery at the post office, we'll accept that as well.
And then if you have kids and they don't have a photo ID, then what do you do in that situation?
You're the contact for them. If you're the parent guardian, then you can get them signed up and as well, and so those accounts will just be tied if they're under 18. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
One of the cool things about Bremerton specifically, and they're trying it out with other locations in the county as well, is if you're a student with Bremerton Public Schools, I'm not sure what year they start, I think second or third grade maybe, but those students automatically have library accounts tied to their school account numbers. So if you got a kid at home that goes to Bremerton Public Schools, their student ID number or their lunch number is a library card number. So they can come in, pick up items, type in their specific student ID number, and that works as a library card, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that is really cool. And, let me just say, for all you parents out there that are looking for ways to keep your kids entertained and not be bored, there's so many different things that they can engage in at the library. And since majority of these things are free, it's really good, especially during the holiday times. And we feel so guilty when we want our kids to have everything. And this is a great way to just expose them to, there's even video games in the library. Like, when did that happen? But it's a really creative way to stimulate their learning and get them. There's always that one thing, right? And it's different for different kids, but they latch on to that one thing. You don't know what it is, they don't know what it is, and then they're hooked and they're gone. So take them to the library. It's pretty awesome. And I know you guys also have like workshops and things that, I don't know if they're still going on now because of COVID, but pre-COVID, there was activities on the weekends and things for the kids too, correct?
Correct. So for the teens, there's the Dungeons and Dragons that has been going pretty well during the pandemic. Online, you can log on virtually, and we have teen librarians that'll help you create a character, and you can play Dungeons and Dragons. And we've also got some in-person pop-up vaccine clinics that have been going. We've also got some nonprofit programs that we've been running. How to apply for your first grant. So anything that's nonprofit related, there's a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, and I believe all of our branches, if not most of them, have monthly book groups that used to meet in person. The majority, if not all, are virtual now. And you don't have to, since we're virtual, you don't have to live in that area to attend that book group. So you can look through our calendar on our website or check out our print calendar, which we have in all of our branches, and you can see what books are being read for which branch. We meet at different times during the month. At downtown Bremerton, we're the fourth Monday of every month. So those are totally free to participate in. We have copies of the books at our libraries. We also have different general interest programs that are, again, mostly virtual at this point. Discussion groups, storytelling groups, informational lecture type things. Majority virtual. Really excited to get back in person when we can. But they're all in our calendar, which is on our website, and I'll make sure that we get the link out there.
And we'll check out the website before we jump off today. But let's kind of get into it. We already were talking a little bit about who you are, right? I'm so excited. I'm jumping in on questions and, well, what about this and what about that? And you got this, but who are you? It just if there's anything that you've left out, just kind of talk a little bit more about the library. And one of the big focal points of this podcast is talking about vaccine misinformation and how to actually get the information that you really need to make an informed decision for yourself and your family. And so that's kind of the focal point here, is we have all these competing narratives and all these different sources of information that come flying in from social media, from the news, from family members, friends, or maybe religious. It's coming from everywhere. And I trust this person because I've always trusted them and they've always been right. But where are they getting their information? How can I check it for myself and make an informed decision? And it's a very polarized time right now. So I want to know the most accurate information, and it's great. I think was it Reagan who said trust but verify? Someone said that. It might have been Reagan. But that's important. So how do you trust but then verify, and where do you go to verify it and kind of break out of that echo chamber? And then when you're looking at both points of view, because I think it's important not just look at the pros, but look at the cons, look at the other side of the conversation. Where can you get reputable information on the other side too, where they're just not just attacking and creating red herring or straw man arguments or things like that. So, that's kind of the big purpose. What is the library, but how can we, get accurate information? So I will toss that up for either one of you, but for both of you, for sure.
Big questions. I think I'll start by saying two things. One, just for this entire conversation, we're information professionals, but we're not medical professionals. So keep that in mind. If there are any questions relating to health or medical safety and you want individual assistance or advice on that, please talk to your health provider, your healthcare provider. Get in touch with Kitsap Public Health if you have like vaccine-related questions. We cannot and will not, I'll just leave that out there, give medical advice, but we do want to help you feel confident in doing your research to find out how you can learn more about it. So that's sort of where we're coming from. And I'll also add that as information professionals, as librarians, we're trained in how to evaluate information resources. And what that means is any book or website or article or video is an information resource. We are trained in our schooling, in our work, in our experience to figure out what does reputability mean? What is trustworthiness? So we want to make sure, similar to how the books on our shelves in the library are the most up-to-date, the most current, they're trustworthy, they're reliable. We also want to make sure that the resources we share out with people when they come to us asking for help are also trustworthy, reliable, up-to-date, accurate. And that includes any like articles or news outlets that we're looking at, databases like Karina had mentioned earlier. Those databases we want to vet them and make sure that they are containing good information for you all, websites as well. Karina, do you want to talk a little about why misinformation is important?
Yeah, so when we're wanting to connect people with those resources, misinformation is something that folks come across, right? People ask us questions just like they wanted to know how to get a divorce in Reno. They might ask us a question about a conspiracy theory that they've run across, and they want to find out more about if it's true or if it's false. So it's important to address that, the potential or what is out there for misinformation, because we're, in a pandemic right now, right? And there is a lot of information that's flying out there. A lot of that information that can be found on social media. And we want to make sure that you know what's true and what's false. And, often it can be framed to hit on our emotions or touch on our values. It can be really highly charged content. So, you want to find out what the background of the information is folks are coming across. There's all kinds of confirmation bias and filter bubbles. And, for those of you, a confirmation bias is when you interpret information, but you're really looking for information that confirms what you already believe. Folks can get trapped in filter bubbles on social media. Filter bubbles are, it's an algorithm or a cookie that knows what you've already been searching, and then the results that are returned tend to be very homogenized. We can all get stuck in our own echo chambers of information that is just agreeing with what we already think instead of looking at alternative points of view. So I guess the more that we talk about these issues and we think critically about them, it helps us make informed decisions for ourselves and the people that we care about.
And it seems like if you get into that echo chamber and you're in the algorithm, a lot of times you don't even know you're in there, right? This information is coming in and you think it's organic and it's varied and you have no idea, right, to how to break out of that, or that you're even caught. You're in the matrix and you don't know. You said something earlier, Priya, and Karina, you were kind of touching on that too. It appears that if you come into the library and you're seeking out information, then you're going to get unbiased help, right? It's not going to be through the lens of I'm for the vaccine or I'm an anti-vaxxer. You're looking for information. Here's where you can go to get reputable information and get those answers. Is that a true statement?
Yes. Yeah, it's sort of our job to take ourselves out of the picture as individuals. We are relying on the guidance of the trusted resources that are in our sphere, and in our sphere as a county organization, that would be our public health department on the county level, on the state level, our health department in Washington. And then overall, there are several national health guiding health organizations that we use to help share their resources out to the public, because there's a lot out there. And there are a lot of people who know what they're talking about. So we're trusting them. We have our reasons for it, which we'll get into later about what makes a trusted resource.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that anyone is absolutely welcome to come into the library or give us a call or send us an email and say, hey, I am curious about this. Help me work through it.
Yeah, your question's a really good one, Marwan, because as librarians, we are trained to assist you with your research, but not to do your research for you. So our goal is to connect you with databases and websites and reliable information, but your research will take you where your research will take you. And, the goal is for all of us to try and make sense of the patchwork of information that we have and bring it together in our own lens.
Yeah, I think that's really important to state, because we're so polarized right now that it seems like, oh, well, where do I go where I'm not going to get an unbiased opinion? It's like, oh, you're a liberal or you're a conservative or you feel this way or you feel that way. You're a flat earther, right? So if I come in and ask you that question, then you're going to give me information that continues to steer me down that in person. So it's good to state that. I think that's really important. And I
Yeah,
appreciate.
I think the thing we like about the library, or that we're passionate about, is that I think that we all have the right to accurate information, and that we don't really need to rely on social media and tech companies to make those decisions for us. So, and finding reliable information is easier than you think. The library is a great place to start. So, for us, that's exciting.
So as a former educator, one of my pet peeves was my students would tell me, "Oh, I Googled it." So is that really good source of information? That drives me crazy. Or, oh, I wikied it. It's just so simplified.
So I have a way of explaining this that makes the most sense to me and that I like to use with some of my library patrons who are newer to the online world. Social media platforms like your Facebook or your Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, and then search engines like Google or Bing or whatever. I know there's some more out there, but they're not as common. They're more so just indexers or aggregators of resources out there, and at its core, they're basically just bulletin boards. If you think about a physical bulletin board with stuff stuck on it, it depends on who puts it on the bulletin board and when they put it and where they put it, right? So if you are on Facebook and you make a Facebook post and it is really useful and really valuable and has some good information, it's going to get buried eventually as more people post stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that their stuff is more reliable or more accurate or more relevant almost, but it's just a matter of how many people are using it, how often they're posting. And then, like Karina had mentioned, the big scary word algorithm. It's just software. It's just software that each social media platform or each social search engine makes to help optimize the experience of their users. But optimize is different, means a different thing for each platform or provider. So if you think about it from a bulletin board perspective, if you Googled it, that's cool. But if you're only looking at like the first page of results, maybe the person who paid the most to have their ad show up at the top of Google, the one who slapped their poster on front of the bulletin board, is not necessarily the person who has the right and reliable information. Maybe it's just a product they're trying to sell. And it takes some time to sort of sort out those resources and say, oh, this is actually what I'm looking for, but maybe it's on the second page of Google. And I know myself, I know other people, it don't often get to the second, third, fourth, fifth pages of Google, right? Like it's human nature. You want your answer quickly. So Google is a good resource in that it gathers lots of information from lots of different places and makes it easier for you to find it. But you have to be discerning about what results are there and which one should be your priority, not just the first one, not the biggest, flashiest headline, but the one that's actually what you're looking for. We could talk about this for ages. I feel like it's an interesting subject for us.
I think from the perspective of your students, though, the phrase, the best thing about the internet is anybody can post and upload information. And the worst thing about the internet is that anybody can post and upload information. So from a student perspective, learning how to discern the value of that information and the trustworthiness of the information is a great thing for us to get to today.
Yeah, it's such a double-edged sword. And, when I was growing up, I used to love spelling and learning new words. And then, oh, here comes Microsoft and, spell check. And I don't have to think anymore. I can just type it in and it'll autocorrect. Now I'm a horrible speller, right? Because I'm just naturally lazy and, oh, I don't have time for this. And it'll autocorrect most of your mistakes. So you don't even know that you made a mistake in some respect. So I kind of see Google and some of the other things, Facebook can be great as a tool, but then it can be really, really bad and toxic at the same time. So it's all about how you use the tool. But, oh man, it's just so frustrating when students would tell me, oh, I Googled it. It's like, well, where did they get that information from? How do you trust that information? How is it, how do you verify it? We're going to jump into that. But, yeah, that's just one of my pet peeves. And it just drives just drove me crazy as that became more of the thing, right? And I'm teaching college, so it's one thing for the kids to do it, but for adults, oh man, that definitely makes me go and get the cane. So so let's talk a little bit about information and media literacy. We were kind of going down that road anyway.
Yeah. So I think there's sort of two sides of the same coin. And sort of to break it down, we all sort of know the word literacy, right? Like being literate is at its core to being able to like read and write and understand information communicated in that way. And that's for all ages, not just kids learning how to read. It takes a lot for all of us to become truly literate and feel like we can communicate accurately. For information literacy, it's sort of the same way where you are taking in information and conveying information as well, and processing it in the middle, but specific to information resources. So if you know that you have an information need, being able to identify what that need is, find where you might be able to learn it or find it, evaluate the information that's put in front of you. So figure out, is this actually what I'm looking for? Is this reliable? Is this total trash that someone just made up? And then communicate that information really effectively. It's something that a lot of us don't really think about. We just sort of consider it common sense, how to make sense of the information that you're seeing. In a media context, it's a little bit more specific. Sort of that critical thinking side. Karina, do you want to share anything else?
Yeah, I mean, they're closely related, but a little bit different. Media literacy is a little bit more about how to navigate media sources and share and create media responsibly. And Priya explained information literacy, very well. It's just more how to make sense of the information that we're actually seeing.
Yeah, I think a real world example of media literacy would be like, I found 2 articles about this topic. One is from a national newspaper and one is from a blog that is 5 years old, that does not have a byline, that is not being updated since 3 years ago, right? Like, which one are you going to give a little bit more weight to in your research? So being able to say like, oh, I'm thinking critically about what this is saying, and I'm able to make that decision on my own.
Well, you know what? In that example, right? In today's age, we have the saying fake news, right? From our major media, sources. So if that is kind of the response, and it's like, okay, yes, I can see your point. A blog may not be as reputable or accurate as the Sun, or the Post. I don't know about the Post, New York Times, right? But then that has some bias and political leanings depending on which one you're looking at. So if someone says, well, how do I know if I can trust that? What's kind of your response there? Like, how do they continue to add resources to say, okay, then what they're saying I can trust, or that's more accurate?
Yeah, I think that sometimes, before we answer that, I think it's important to understand that sometimes the information that is shared, there's a difference between misinformation and disinformation. And that difference is important because there's intent behind each of them. Misinformation is information that's shared that is incorrect, but there's not necessarily a nefarious intent behind it. It's just inaccurate information that was passed on. So, an example of that is, I think, a while back, there was something going around on social media about dolphins swimming in the canals of Venice. Okay, so that wasn't true. It didn't really happen, but it's kind of an interesting thing to consider. And if you have a friend who's going to Venice, you might easily just hit share and move that along. And that's just, oops, that was misinformation. Did it necessarily harm anybody? Probably not. Was it accurate? No, it wasn't accurate either. But disinformation, on the other hand, is a little bit more of a serious situation where the intent is, in fact, nefarious. That it's misleading and biased information that is manipulating facts. It's propaganda specifically. So when you get to the disinformation side of things, what you're doing is you're sharing conspiracy theories, for example, about the origins of COVID that are not true, and they are damaging.
So one thought that I had in my mind, and I wanted to ask and see if you think this is accurate. When I think of the term media literacy, I'm thinking more of, my ability to discern, fact versus opinion. And so right now, if you look at MSNBC and the folks that they have on their on many of their shows, or even Fox News and many of their shows, there it's more opinion based, right? So they may take an actual news story and give you some facts, but then they are giving you their opinion and their thought on it. And so many millions of Americans are taking that as the gospel, right? Those are facts and it's opinion. So I kind of look at media literacy as being able to take the information and separate out fact from opinion, and then deal with the fact for myself. Is that an accurate assessment? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the distinction that you're highlighting is really important here. And it is really hard to tell fact from opinion sometimes, because our different media sources, like our newspapers, our TV channels, our social media channels, they all sort of blend together a lot of the time. And it can be hard to tell, who's a true reporter, has been on the ground, who saw this thing happen, who's reporting on it, who's providing commentary on what that reporter experienced, who's reacting to that commentary. So it's sort of a chain, and it can be hard to tell, where am I in that chain? To that note specifically, I'm going to share just one of our tools we're going to touch on a little later, but I think it's useful here.
Yeah,
Specific also to when you were saying about the news media, think about what is trustworthy to you. So for me, for instance, I want to know if I want to know facts about an event that happened. I want to know the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why. Who did it happen to? Where was it? What happened? When did it happen? And why? What's the context of it, right? So if you're looking at, just as an example, like an article from the Washington Post, say, if you're reading through, are those 5 W's there? What else is there? Is there commentary? Is there a lot of I, you, we? I'm thinking about, like MSNBC commentary, like you mentioned, like a lot of I think, or I don't know, but those really aren't necessary for conveying fact, because what you need to know for fact is who, what, where, when, why, basically, and not necessarily what do I think about it? What do we think about it? So those are, pretty obvious, like verbal cues that you can sort of pay attention to and say, oh, I think this might be opinion actually, or commentary. That's not to say that opinion or commentary have no value. People find a lot of comfort in that. People find sometimes it's just easier, more palatable to deal with, the real messed up world that we're in, when you feel like someone out there, is pushing it forward in a way that makes sense to you. But it really is important to think critically about why that sits better with you, and are you still getting the full story when it's sort of couched in this really subjective take.
I think it kind of goes to the confirmation bias that Karina was speaking to also, right? So you're looking at the who, what, why, when, where, and then you're listening to the opinion, and it's like, oh yeah, I feel that way, and now opinion becomes fact, and you're not separating those things out. And so, as you were speaking, Priya, I'm thinking, my daughter's in the 5th grade, and it's like, well, that's what she's learning right now, is right. What are the 5 W's? And when she writes, then she needs to, provide those 5 W's. But as adults, we tend to, we're just consuming it, and we're not looking at those things. It's just kind of this auto process that just takes place. And so being cognizant of that and trying to strip that away, I think is something that we can do as individuals that will help to kind of change how information is given to us, right? At some point, we're being fed back what it is we want, and that seems dangerous. But that's an opinion, right? That's not a fact. I have nothing to prove that or support what I'm saying right now. But that's the whole point. And so I think about how important it is for me as I have different entities come on, like let's say Kitsap Public Health, and I'm going through, their weekly updates on what's going on with vaccinations or COVID rates, and trying to make sure that I say, okay, this is what I'm stating. Here's the fact that you can see, and then I'm giving you opinion. So yesterday on the show, I was talking about, typically what happens is, you know, um, we have this spike and things shut down. We get the numbers out of control, and there's COVID fatigue, and we want to open it back up because of the economy. And then, or there's a holiday, and then of course we see this spike. So we keep having this lag, and it's like, come on, everyone. You can see this is happening. We've been doing it now for more than a year and a half. Like, we need to do something different because we know it's coming. And sure enough, I didn't see it during the podcast, but I was watching the night news, and right through kind of the middle of the country, the numbers are increasing again, and it's 2 weeks after Halloween. So, it's like, okay, but even still, I need to be careful on how I present that information because it can very much come out like that's opinion, that is based in some fact. It's just such a slippery slope. You know what I mean?
Mhm. And I think it's really easy to fall into like shame and blame at that point also, like thinking like, hey, this has been happening and repeating and cycling, and public health officials are telling us that these cycles are going to continue after every holiday and when these spikes happen, and why don't you do better? Like that doesn't work for regular people like us. Like no one wants to feel blamed or shamed for wanting to see their family or get back to normalcy or have their kids feel like they can socialize, right? So it's a matter of finding resources that will help educate people as to like ways to do better that aren't necessarily shaming you or saying like this is your fault, because no one wants to deal with those emotions. We're all going through some tough stuff nowadays anyway.
I think there's always a human being on the other side of the misinformation that we hear. And so it's important not to assume that there is malice behind that misinformation, but just to do the best that we can to keep, connecting each other with reliable and trusted resources. I mean, especially during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you that are just joining the Conduit, we're having a great conversation with the Kitsap Regional Library. We have Karina Wood from the Paulsboro branch and Priya Chari from the downtown branch. And we're having a discussion on what the library has to offer, but it's also centered around information and how to get accurate information, and dealing with misinformation and disinformation. And so, as we're on that, and thank you so much for coming on today. I hope this is the first of many appearances on the Conduit. But is there anything else more that you want to say about misinformation and disinformation? I know much of our conversation is blending together. We've got an outline that we're trying to cover, but all of these things are kind of like this Venn diagram that's super tight.
I'll say some of the wording around the larger concept of bad information can be really confusing. And so we use misinformation and disinformation, and Karina explained earlier what those two particular types of information are. Marwan, you used the term fake news earlier, and that's one we heard a lot the past few years in a very particular context also around like the news media or just the media, as that term has come to be known. It's a little politicized, if I can make that jump to say. The term itself, like fake news, doesn't in the information world doesn't really mean a whole lot, because news is news, and if it's not news, it's either mis or disinformation. It's bad information. So that's a distinction that at least I try to make in my information practice. Like if I'm sharing news, it's going to be actual definitive news. But it all just sort of comes down to where you're getting your information, why you trust it, and sort of having that critical thinking, that conversation around what makes you trust the information that you trust. And I will say also, one of the signs of a trusted resources for me is owning up when you share misinformation. Most, if not all of for instance, print news media, the ones that are the most trusted, they'll be very transparent about mistakes they make. or they'll say, hey, an earlier version of this article incorrectly stated this person's name or this person's, something that happened. And they will make that very clear in a note, either at the top of the article or the bottom of the article. And so that's one way to say like, oh, this organization, this group, this media resource really tries to stick to the truth, because when they find out that they might have shared something incorrectly, they try to fix that. So that's just one sign where you can see like, oh, they actually do take this very seriously. So that's just one element. But was there anything else, Karina? I'm thinking about that.
Well, yeah, I think, we're kind of like, moving through different parts of like how to address misinformation. If it's sitting in front of you and you take a look at the 5 W's that Priya mentioned, the who, what, when, where, why, that's all good information. But if we look at an example of like, okay, so I'm trying to learn more about health information right now. That's my example, because we're, health literacy and what's going on with the pandemic is important to me. That so what are trusted resources? Where do you even start? And there's like the big giant macro level of trusted resources, and that's always a good place to start to see what's going on around the globe. And then, you can narrow in very slowly and get down to what's happening in your local community. So like the big giant trusted resource that's international, the World Health Organization is a great place to start. Just go on their website, see what's going on, currently with the pandemic, see what they've posted about vaccines for the 5 to 11-year-old age group. What are they saying? After you explore that website, and remember, they're going to have fantastic, one of my favorite places to go is to the frequently asked questions right away. My second favorite place to go is to the Mythbusters section. And then with those two things in mind, move on to something that's a little bit, not quite as macro, but now we're getting into the national level, like the CDC. The Center for Disease Control, they have a national perspective, but they also break it down by state. And then, moving into that, there's also the National Institute of Health, another great place to go. And as we get down to the state level, in our case, that would be the Washington Department of Health. We can get down to the local level. Priya and I are in, really close touch with the Kitsap Public Health Department. We were on regular Zooms with them, finding out what's going on in our local area, close to our local branches. And then, there is, a broad, Medline Plus. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, but it's a great resource that is put together by the Library of Medicine, the National Library of Medicine. And what I love about that is it's got this easy to read section that you can click on, and it just gives you medical information in plain, easy to understand language. It's got an English option, it's got a Spanish option. Those are great health literacy trusted resources to just begin with. And remember that once you begin with those, you want to talk a little bit, Priya, about there's all kinds of places you can go from there.
Yeah. I want to take one step back just to sort of think about the term trusted resources that we've been using, because everyone sort of has their own definition of like what you trust, why you trust it. And so it takes some real critical thinking that you can do on your own. That's really satisfying to do, honestly, like over dinner with your family or friends, as a conversation starter about why do we trust what we trust? What makes a trusted resource when it comes to information, when it comes to seeking out information to help with, work or school or your health or personal pursuits, things like that. What makes a trusted resource? Is it someone who comes from your community? Is it a large organization that has a lot of money for research? Is it someone who speaks your language? For instance, if you're not an English speaker, you're in the US, your resources are severely limited. So who do you trust? Someone who you maybe might be really well funded, but you can't understand a word of what they're saying, or they don't spring for translation services. That might be a sign that they're not quite your jam. What is important when it comes to seeking out news sources for you? Is it something that you can do on your phone because you don't have a computer at home? Is it, someone who's really savvy around social media? I know for a lot of our younger folks, they're not really going to go straight to a newspaper or straight to a government website, but they're going to see if they have a Twitter account, because Twitter, as an example, is a platform that is so timely. So if there's someone on the ground at an event that's happening, you're going to get updates from them like on the minute. And many like large newspapers, for instance, will share live breaking updates. And so that, for instance, is a sign of trustworthiness, because for a lot of folks, having that sort of time commitment is really valuable. So that's another option. Maybe some people say, hey, I actually don't care about the social media aspect. I trust someone if they put it in print. And so those are just two different sides of the same coin. Just sort of thinking about who or what do we trust? Why? Do I trust individuals? Do I trust groups of individuals? If I'm reading a newspaper, do I care about who actually wrote the article? Ideally, yes, because then you'd be able to see what they've written, what's their area of expertise. And honestly, what even makes an expert in the first place? Like, is it someone who has formal education? Is it someone who has spent 30 years doing this? And so, they have that experience. Is it someone who maybe doesn't have that experience, but comes from a community that they're writing about or blogging about or tweeting about? So all of these are really subjective. Like, everyone trusts different things, and that's not a bad thing at all. There is some overall large consensus. For instance, like in the US, if you're thinking about diseases, you're going to trust the CDC because it is the largest, most well-funded research institution we have in our country. They have connections in every single state. They are the most well-resourced and have, honestly, the best brains. But if you're really unsure about that, think about what specifically about their work helps. For instance, do they take their research and translate it into simple language for regular folks like you and me who aren't scientists to understand? If they do, that proves that they really do care about how we as individuals interpret what they're saying. So for instance, for the policy level all the way down to the everyday level. And so for me, it makes me trust someone a little bit more if I know that they're willing to put in the work and the effort to make sure that individuals can benefit from the work that they're doing. So this is just a few questions you can ask yourself about, like, who do I trust? Why do I trust them? Because that can also help you expand your horizons. There are several, for a lot of us who grew up with like the 6 o'clock news. I was thinking about this question earlier. So I grew up in my house every single weeknight because my mom, I think, had like a fat crush on Peter Jennings. But so growing up, and I think I did too, but I was like, why did I so look forward to watching this newscaster read me the news in a very soothing tone? And I think a lot of like evening news reporters sort of have that thing where they're very objective, calming news reporters who are very clear about who, was on the ground, reported this story. They tell it in very objective, fact-based and a narrative, and they don't necessarily add that commentary because that's not the place for it. So that's one personal example. I thought trusted resources in journalism. I was like, man, I miss Peter Jennings. I'm sure everyone has that figure, who's like, oh, that is a trusted resource. I never really thought about why,
No, I think that is important, and that can be very influencing also. I want to ask a hard question because it's centered around, again, vaccines and, COVID and everything else. And so Karina had brought up kind of macro, the WHO, so the World Health Organization, as being a trusted source. And while the majority of, if you took a poll, most people are going to say, major news media, CDC, the WHO, by and large, are trustworthy, right? There have been a lot of questions, right? There has been, let's say, some misinformation or delayed information or changing information from Dr. Fauci, and so it is muddled, the conversation, and it has eroded the trust because trying to give grace, right? They're doing the best they can in an environment that's new, that's fast changing. So this is accurate today, and then we get more information 2 weeks or a month from now, and that old information is bad. So no, don't do that anymore. And so folks that are against that are going to capitalize on that and use it. So even when they apologize, like you said, Priya, the damage is done. So my question is, all right, so I'm taking the WHO, right? I've got the World Health Organization, and and this may be for the fringe that comes in, right? So if I'm one of those folks, it's like, all right, well, the WHO is reputable. Well, what else would I use to reinforce or support that the WHO is reputable? Like, where else would you cite them to? Would you say the CDC or their other independent organizations or nonprofits or whatever that are reputable, or whatever that source is, to say, okay, you could go here and you can go here and go here. And if all these folks are kind of saying the same thing, then that's probably a trusted source on what they're saying. How do you kind of combat that when they're like saying, hey, I don't trust that at all?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question, because I rattled off a bunch of these government resources, right? But maybe you are a person who understandably may not trust a government resource because there's some legitimate mistrust on your part about government resources. Maybe you haven't been treated, all that well, and so you have a hard time believing those recommendations. So in that case, I think there are some non-government resources that may have worked hard to establish trust in your community that are just as legitimate or more legitimate to go to, again, because trust is a big issue, and it's okay to trust resources, right? So some non-government, it's necessary to trust resources. If the resource is true, but you're gun shy about it, then go somewhere where you're comfortable. So, for example, the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, has a fantastic website and a section of their website about COVID information. That's called COVID No More, I think. And it's a campaign sharing information about just COVID-19 resources for Black Americans. Locally, there's the Kitsap Immigration Assistance Center. They have worked so hard to develop trust and in an underserved community, and folks go there for culturally informed information. If they're feeling vaccine hesitant, they feel like they can trust the information that's coming out of Kayak. Also, just as I got to throw out a plug for the National Alliance of Mental Illness, because there has been mental illness, and it has been one of the hardest parts of the pandemic. And I think, just understanding the challenges of our mental well-being, going somewhere where you can get relevant information that you can count on about what's going on with you and your family. So, all alternatives to the big acronyms, although they are actually all acronyms as well. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll add that, so if you have some degree of government mistrust, we're not judging you on that. Everyone's got their own background, everyone's got their own history. But it's sort of a matter of how much do you trust who you trust, and are you willing to trust that their trust of a resource is worthwhile, right? So for instance, with that last resource that Karina was talking about, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, they're not a health provider. They're not a health organization when it comes to medical health. But for mental health, they are leaders in the field, and they're a national organization that has local chapters all over the place, right? And so through their work, they're not telling people hey, go do this or go do that, or giving specific advice on how to treat COVID-19, for instance. However, they are saying, hey, we don't do that. If you want information on that, go check the CDC, go check the WHO. We trust them enough to pass you on to them, or to take their resources and spread them out amongst our team. So if that's sort of an instance we're saying hey, I really do trust NAMI. I've been, for instance, hey, I've been a part of their group for a little while. If they're telling me this is trustworthy, I'm going to believe them. I'm also going to go do some research and say, hey, well, the resource they're giving me, it's an international organization, and there's thousands of people who are funding this research. So you do a little bit of background research as well, but hopefully knowing that people you trust them will help sort of ease you into that, especially if it's someone like the WHO or the CDC, whose research is funded by so many different people. I mean, it's really easy to think there's one big government organization and it's just one big thing, but they're actually working with universities and research labs and epidemiologists and people who have this experience, not just within that one department, but all over the place. So if at any point you think like, hey, I'd actually really prefer to know that the information I'm getting is from like a university research center, for instance, go that route. Like you're probably going to end up at the same place because there's a lot of consensus around like vaccine protocol and how this was all developed, especially in the US. But there's lots of different routes you can get to a trusted resource as long as you're just thinking critically about why that is.
And, and I think that's a really great point, is the thinking critically. It's like this is going to require some effort. You can't put your brain on autopilot and just say, "Hey, well, I trust them, so that's it. I don't have to go any further." Ask the 5 W's and look at some other places that you do trust. Like I think of a lot of folks that are more educated, or they follow like maybe their favorite university or college, right? So they have that inherent trust in that. It's like, okay, so what is their medical department saying, right? I mean, you're a Husky, and so it's like, oh yeah, UW, and they are great in medicine. So what is it that they're saying? So does that support what the CDC is saying? Are they saying that they support that, or is that something counter? So I think that's actually a great, added tool that you could put in your toolbox to help you, decipher, good information versus disinformation or opinion and all those good things. So thank you for that. I think that's really powerful. And people need.
Priya and I, last year, I think we were doing a presentation together, and the presentation concluded, the topic of the presentation was misinformation and disinformation. And someone typed into the chat, "Isn't there an easier way to do this? Does it have to be so much work?" And I chuckled because, the answer is no. No, there's not an easier way to do this. We all have to think critically and be willing to do the work.
Right. And we're in a microwave society, right? Everything is so instantaneous. We want fast food. We want everything yesterday and just perfect. But it does require that. And if we're unhappy with the state that the world is in, or whatever the situation or the scenario that we're focused on at the time is, then it requires thought, right? It's not going to get resolved or fixed because I just want the easy button answer, right? It is going to require some work and some effort. And so if we're willing to do that more, I think a lot of that disinformation and information and that distrust starts to decrease a little bit. And hopefully, the reputable sources, whoever they may be, really go a long way to repair, when they've done damage or done harm, in the past, or put out some misinformation. So I know there's like all kinds of things between, do you want to panic the public versus, there's all kinds of stuff we can go down the rabbit hole on. But we're already talking about finding trusted resources. Priya, you were like guiding us through without even, we're just going through. So are there any other finding trusted resources before we move on? Because I think we're hitting it.
I think I would just add, again, I want to reiterate, like, you trust who you trust. We're not telling you who is like 100% reputable, trustworthy, because we're all individuals. We all come from different places, different backgrounds, different families, different histories, and different values. And so, for instance, people who place high value in like scientific evidence might feel better trusting, a scientific research resource or the CDC, who are very clear about like including scientific-based recommendations in what they're putting out there. Others might find that condescending or really complicated. And so you don't have to feel bad about thinking like, hey, I actually really don't care about this. I care about this. Because there's plenty of good resources out there for everything that you're interested in. You just have to take some time to hunt for it. And that's what we're here for. So another plug for the library. We're absolutely happy to sort of walk through that path with you and find, maybe you find resources from the faith community so much more compelling than from the science community. Fantastic. There's plenty out there. There's lots of like faith leaders and religious groups out there who are doing good work to promote the health and well-being of their communities. Just take some time to find them. And then think critically like, hey, are they actually doing what they say they're doing? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And look at the 5 W's. I think sometimes the simplest way is the most effective way. It's like, yeah, this can work. It does take you to take this information on whatever format you're getting it, and ask those simple questions, and then let the opinion go to the side. These are the facts. So now what are you going to do with the facts? And, who do you trust in your circle, in your network? Can you partner that up with? And is that consistent? But then I think the converse is also true. I think you do need to look at some sources outside of your trusted circle, that are typically trustworthy by others, and say, okay, what are the 5 W's there? Is that opinion? Um, I think that gives you the most informed and most accurate, viewpoint to give yourself the best um, information to make an informed decision, right? And some of these decisions are pretty big, right? Do I get vaccinated? Do I give my child who's 5, a vaccine? Um, those are hard questions, and we talk about that on the podcast with Kitsap Public Health on Monday. And there, I even have concerns, right? But I do the research and I talk with folks that I trust, like Kitsap Public Health, or I look at the CDC, I look at the WHO, I look at some periodicals. I don't go super deep on it, right? Because I have no interest and no time to do that for every single thing. But I'm gonna go and look at what's reputable, but I also do listen to some of the counterpoints also, and trying to analyze that too, and then try to also figure out what is their intent on providing that information. I think that's important too, right? Like, what's behind you sharing this info? So is it purely to provide information, or is there's some kind of motivation behind that? As Karina was saying, is it nefarious, right? Because that's there too, and it's just so hard. We're in such a difficult time right now with distrust, and there's so much work to do to try to build it back. But this is how we do it, right? I think this is a great way to do that. So let's talk about information evaluation tools and strategies.
So we hit the 5 W's already. If you remember one thing from this conversation, I think this would probably be the tool to remember.
The 5 W's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's just something that we all learned in school. And, Pri and I, there's a lot of acronyms that are flying out there in the information world that help us remember and evaluate information. But that's my favorite. It's easy for all of us to remember. Just go back to the 5 W's. There's also an organization out there that we both really like, Pen America. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but they have this cool thing called a media literacy toolkit. It's an organization that, well, its purpose is to defend the liberties of creative expression. Essentially, it was founded in 1922, and it's composed of people like journalists and writers and editors and publishers. And they've got a list of 5 things that they encourage you to do when it comes to evaluating information. They call it their media literacy toolkit. And I'll say the first one is one of my favorites. It's just to take control of your digital experience, which I think is maybe a fancier way of just saying, think about, like, what is your information diet? That's a phrase I really like. What am I doing? What am I consuming on a daily basis? And I have to say that I am guilty of, I've got my favorite sources. I just do. And so I try to be cognitive of those favorite sources and push myself to take a look at some things that will expose me to points of view that I may not necessarily agree with. So, that's, I think, step 1. The step 2 is to just stop. Before you do anything, just stop and think. Stop before you share. Stop before you move that piece of information on, and think about it and slow down and do a little research. Some of the other things we've talked about, but I think when it comes to the verification, there's nothing wrong with going to Snopes or Fact Check or PolitiFact and just verifying it. Again, slow down before you share.
So I just pulled up the pen.org media literacy toolkit. That is in the chat for those of you that want the URL. But I always like going to different websites so people can see that they're in the right place. If you type one character off, it can take you to somewhere totally different. If you do .org versus .edu or .com, that could take you somewhere else. So it's just, I just want to confirm we are in the correct place.
Yes.
So if you do use this resource, you'll see a nice little red banner, and this is the Media Literacy Toolkit. And there is a Spanish option here, which is awesome, right? And, take control of your digital experience, pause and question your reactions to things you see online, understand what you're seeing, distinguish between news and opinion. One thing that just kind of strikes me listening to you speak today, Karina and Priya, is it's a measure twice, cut once philosophy, right? If you take a little bit more time to ask the 5 W's to do a little bit of this now, then you don't have to constantly question it, because you're gonna keep being bombarded every day through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, print media, friends, families, organizations. And so if you take a little time up front and you've got the information, you'll actually have to do less. I think this would potentially cut down and on anxiety, and just unknowing, right? Just kind of being unsure of what to believe, because there's so much information out there. So this doesn't take long. Just popped it right on in, and of course you've got great resources. I love talking to people. I think it's powerful to include other people in your investigative journey. So using the library, which they're all over the place in Kitsap County, so there's no reason not to, right? They're super accessible and tremendously friendly, and they smile, which is awesome, right? So yeah, that's a big deal, and we've social distanced for so long, and now we're trying to come back together, so it's important. um and it is tough, right? I'll go and I'm doing research for a show, and it's like 2 hours later, and I've looked at 5 or 6 other things because I've gone down these rabbit holes. And librarians can help to keep you on task and on what you're trying to find, so you're not in this rabbit hole, because that it is a time drain, right? I mean, that happens with Facebook and all kinds of different things, and you look up and it's like, oh my goodness, man, I used a bunch of time and I didn't even get what I was trying to, what my original purpose was. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's really helpful, really helpful. Now, did you guys want to go and take a look at the library's website?
Totally.
Sure.
And I will also add the Pen America guide. It's just one guide that the two of us really like. There are plenty of other information evaluation tools out there. A lot of them are actually available through university library websites as sort of trainings they give their students to start getting ready to do research. So if you need any help finding one that works for you, please let us know. There's plenty of them out there.
While I'm pulling this up, for some of us, we don't remember elementary school very well, or middle school. Uh, what are some of the tools that you would use to, I'll say quickly, because we're saying slow down, but to quickly try to figure out what the 5 W's are, because sometimes that can be hard to pull out of an article or out of a newscast. You're listening to this information. So, any strategies on what to listen for, what those potential keywords might be, as someone is going through this exercise?
That's a good question.
Well, there is one tool that I like for the for the who, like, is the person an expert or not? I don't know if this is really elementary school ready, but I don't know if you've heard of on Google Scholar, you can actually go in and find out what someone's H factor rating is. If you're look at the Google Scholar's profile, if they've written a lot and they're peer reviewed, you can see what their rating is. If anything over 25, they're taking up a lot of the space in that area of expertise. So that's handy. Also, when you're looking at images, remember that you can always go in and you can right click and you can do a reverse image search to find out what the origin of an image is, see if it's been altered in any way. That can be a fun thing for an elementary school kid to do.
Ooh, you got tricks.
Yeah, you go back and maybe the sign that you saw on social media and what that sign says is very different than what the original sign that someone was holding might say. So I think those are two kind of fun tools.
Oh, I think that's awesome. See, I would never consider doing that, like altering an image and yeah, that's powerful. And then understanding too, like sometimes even your main news sources, I know I think MSNBC did this once where they were talking about flooding or wildfires, and they actually used footage from a disaster movie. And so that kind of erodes trust, right? Because it's like, well, it wasn't that bad, that's not what was going on, but they wanted something visceral to really trigger people's minds. And so you have to be careful when you're presenting information because you can destroy trust. So when it came out, it was like, it hurt their trust. But
Mhm.
we are at the Kitsap Regional Library, and if you want to just give us a quick little tour.
Sure. I guess we can go really quickly. So this is sort of our home base for all of the information about what we do and what we have, as well as our library catalog, so you can search what's in our collection. So I guess starting up at the top, on the top right-hand corner, you see locations, contact, support us, and my account. The first three drop down. So if you know which location you're looking for, you can select your branch there. And that just brings us to the branch page where you can find like our hours, ways to get in touch, and any programs specific to that location. So, that's our big yellow building. And you can scroll down and just take a peek at programs going on that are affiliated with our location specifically. So we're doing outdoor story times every Wednesday that are held in Evergreen Park. So that's the one that's showing up on our calendar right now. Our program calendar is a little light across the board because
Is that for kids or adults, Priya?
For kids. Although if you're an adult and you have a kid, please both of you come by.
So is that because it's early release? Is that why it's 10:30?
Most of our story times they're for younger kids, and so they tend to be in the mornings or maybe early afternoons.
Okay.
It depends on the location. We also have a virtual story time that's happening, which you can find in a separate part of our website. But yeah, so this is sort of our branch home base. If you scroll down a little further, you should be able to see our branch manager and our
Well, Priya, hold
contact
on.
information.
Before you scroll down, I just want
Yeah.
to plug this a little bit more. So for all of you, parents that are stay-at-home parents with little kiddos, and you're looking for something to do, this sounds fantastic. They're out at the park, and they can have story time. Then after, you can take them over to the this is my daughter's favorite park, by the way. So
Oh,
we'll
lovely.
go and play over in the on the play equipment, whatever they call that stuff, and then we'll go to the little white store and get some ice cream or get some candy. This is our favorite park. So I didn't know there was story time. She's in school at this time, but for the little ones, man, this is it right here. Okay,
Yeah, we're trying to do more programming outdoors because our meeting spaces in many of our branches are still unavailable. We're trying to keep numbers low for meeting spaces. So when we can do things outdoors, we will. I know that this story time is under a covered shelter, so you won't be out in the rain if it is raining, but just in case.
Is that like an hour?
Sorry?
How long is it? It starts at
Just about 30-40 minutes or so. So it's not too long.
okay.
Perfect to like get your kiddo engaged, thinking about something. There's usually a little physical component as well. And then you can, go off to get ice cream and go for your walk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stuck in the home by yourself, adults, you want to get around some other adults and stretch your legs. I think it's wonderful. He didn't even know the library was doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, our story times are sort of our like flagship children's program, but it is a cool way for parents to get to know one another, especially if you're in the neighborhood. Yeah, and so the rest of the page here, you see the branch manager, the hours that we're open, and then our location, and then a little bit about the branch history. And it's really cool, actually, if you go through all of this branch page, but for every location, you can kind of get a little like patchwork history of Kitsap. It's pretty cool.
Nice. 1938, huh? Interesting.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. And
So
then
that is our sort of our top menu. If you go back up all the way to the top, cool. Under contact, we've got all the different ways you can get in touch with us. We can help you find things related to genealogy. We can look up obituaries if you need to. And then at the bottom there, purchase requests, is if there's an item that we don't have in our collection that you would like us to get for you.
wow.
We can either purchase a copy to add to our collection so you can check it out, or we can get it from another library someplace else. So we borrow it from them, so you can borrow it from us. It's kind of called an interlibrary loan. And so we just want to make sure that we get you what you're looking for, even if we don't actually have it in our
What's Book a
collection.
Library? Book a Librarian. What is that?
Yeah. Karina, you want to talk about Book a Librarian? I think you do it more than I do.
Yeah, sure. So Book a Librarian is if you want to have a one-on-one appointment with a librarian. Right now we're doing those virtually, but you just fill out that form and you say what your preferred location is. We might we'll connect you with the librarian that we think makes the most sense, also depending on what the topic is. And we'll send you out a Zoom link, and we can meet on Zoom for up to an hour of uninterrupted time, and we can just help you with a research question. The ones that I do specifically tend to be focused on the business community in Kitsap County, because that's one of my areas of specialization. So I do a lot of data axle appointments for that particular database that helps businesses find out who their potential customers are and who their competitors are. We get a lot of book librarians for our foundation directory online database. If you're a nonprofit and you want to get connected with, if you're a grant seeker and you want to get connected with a grant maker. And I know that our teen librarians also it's pretty frequent for them to do a book a librarian with a teen who wants to make a Dungeons and Dragons character. Or it could just be, anything that's related to a research topic that you're wanting to pursue.
First off, that is awesome. We might be doing that down at G2 and booking an appointment with Book a Librarian just for that, right? Grant seeking is really important. But what's so powerful about that, like I don't know all the resources that the library has, and I know that so many other folks don't. And my next podcast is an entrepreneur who is opening up a gym on Pacific Avenue, just up and around the corner from us. And one of the things he was asking was like, hey, where can I get grant money, and how can I, get funding and things of that nature? And it's like, well, and I don't run a gym, so I don't really know. I can give you kind of some general places to maybe look, but what a resource, not even, 3 blocks away from his building. This is super powerful. I just absolutely love it. Thank you so much. And it's free. Like, why would you not take advantage of these things? Right? Oh, I'm bored. There's nothing to do. It's like, I need some help. I have no idea how to start a business or, what things to consider. Hey, I'm just saying. All right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a surprising number of resources there. I'll go real quickly through our menu bar, and then Karina, if there's anything you want to hone in on. Across the black bar on the top, we've got Read, Watch, Listen, which is basically everything relating to like how to interact with our collection. Next to that, under Download, it is all of our ebooks, our e-audiobooks, and those are ones that you can listen to through an app on your device or on your computer. You can check out digital magazines, listen to music, or we have a video streaming service called Curiosity Stream that we subscribe to that is kind of like Netflix, but for educational, like documentary type programs. It is real cool, totally free, and you can get it with your library card. Next to that is our research tab that's got general topics. And then if you click research, it'll go to all of our databases, which we've brought up some previously. You can see it's just alphabetical. We've got like Ancestry. We've got some research, for instance, biographies for kiddos. We've got, what's the car repair one? There's all data. There we go.
All data, yeah.
Automated diagnostic and repair information, which is used surprisingly frequently. We've got Encyclopedia Britannica. We've got Brain Fuse is a really cool one. It's got live tutoring for kids of all ages, but also if you want someone to look over your resume, there's a live tutor who can do that for you. They can help you with your FAFSA application, homework help, things like that.
For free?
For free, yeah.
For free. Yeah.
I'm blown away. Okay.
Yeah. We've got quite a bit more. Karina, I think did you cover Candid yet?
Well, yeah, I think Candid, and it's pretty closely related to the Foundation Directory online. Oh, there's Consumer Reports. That's one of my favorite ones. Yay.
I like Consumer Reports.
Yeah, and honestly, like involving yourself in Consumer Reports through the database is easier than sifting through all of the previous editions. So I really recommend the database.
I see COVID-19 resources here on the left. Find reliable and current info about the outbreak from local, state, and national agencies.
Yeah, so we compiled a list of basically the most up-to-date, reliable resources we could find to have them all in one place, trying to keep it up to date. It's a work in progress, but that's one place to start. One of the newer ones we have is Fold3, which is a database to look through military history records, photos. So kind of like, well, it's part of the Ancestry history database family, but specific to military history, which is pretty cool because, you know, that's just relevant to the region that we're in. The one directly below that, actually, super helpful, Peterson's Test and Career Prep. So if you are prepping for the GED, the SAT, the GRE, or a whole range of like career specific tests, this database will have practice tests. It'll have resources to help study. So you don't have to buy one of those really chunky books with all the practice tests inside. All for free. You can do it online, print it out if you need to. So that's sort of like an unsung beauty within our databases.
Yeah, Priya, this is crazy right here. And folks will pay hundreds of dollars for these test prep, you know. Wow. Okay.
Can we do the horn again for that one?
I guess my nerd is coming out too. This is fantastic. I love this.
And then we've got a few newspapers linked here as well, if you which have back issues in a digital form. So the Sun, the New York Times, and then I think Newsbank, the one next to the New York Times, is sort of an aggregator of a bunch of different newspapers. So you can do, if you're looking for like a particular article or an event that happened and you want to see all the news coverage that was about that event, you can go into Newsbank and sort of type in your keyword or your reporter's name or a specific date and sort of start your research that way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the LinkedIn Learning, online learning courses and instructional videos on technology, business, design skills, and more, is that's free also for mobile app or our library ID?
Yeah, that's one that we are particularly proud of. It used to be called lynda.com, and we couldn't quite afford it before we passed our 2017 levy. But when we passed the levy, that's when we were able to introduce that database. It's one of our most popular databases, and you know, I mean, anything that you want to learn, if you want to learn how to do something complicated in Excel that you've never done before, you know, you can find a 10-minute video that takes you through the process of how to do it. If you want to write your first resume, if you want to write a profit and loss statement and you're a new business, there's great tutorials, high quality tutorials in there.
So, Karina, you said this was a levy?
Well, when we passed our 2017 levy, you know, we were able to get the funding to get things that we had wanted for a while that we maybe didn't have the budget for. And lynda.com, now renamed LinkedIn Learning, was one of those things.
And a levy is something that Kitsap County voters voted on, correct?
That's right. Yep.
And we
levy,
just,
we are supported by levy dollars. Yes.
We just had an election November 2nd.
Well, yeah, we went out for levy in 2017. So
no, I'm just making the point on how important it is to vote.
It really is.
These resources are here. Use these resources, people. This stuff is fantastic. Look at this stuff. This page alone. Oh boy. Okay.
That's very kind of you to say. I will say also, like, we have plenty of databases. We've got like thousands and thousands of physical resources, but we've also got people. And I feel like our people are some of our best resources as well, because our staff sort of have the time and the energy and the expertise to connect with individuals to say, like, what are you interested in? Let's help you learn about it. Or, you know, let's have a book a librarian session on where to start your research. Or let's talk to your school classroom about what the library is, what it does, that type of thing. So we've got digital stuff, we've got print stuff, we've got people, we've got everything.
And so, yeah, so that's research. And so for classes and events here.
Yeah, so if you click on that, it'll bring you to our calendar. And that is all of our programs and events by date. They are also set apart by the locations where they're happening. A lot of them you'll see virtual classes and events, and that means it's virtual. It doesn't matter where you're calling in from. You can limit on the left-hand side by the type of program or the location. So for instance, if you're interested in what's going on in Poulsbo, select Poulsbo and hit search. And so that's what's going on for the rest of this month. It's just limited by the month.
Nice. And then, of course, under here is the One Book, One Community. And, kind of as a plug, I'll switch that. And what was that? Full disclosure. I was part of that. And right before COVID, and I was actually on the cover. So,
Yep.
that was an honor. I'm definitely proud of that. I've got, the big 11 by, or however big that is, 20 by something. My daughter has one of those and one sits in the office. So, yeah, no, it was an honor to participate.
I think I see it behind you there. Wait a minute. There it is.
Yeah, right. Shout out to the library for sure.
Yeah, we really love to do, community-centric programs and initiatives that sort of highlight the cool things that are happening in our community and the cool people who are making that happen, like Marwan. But, also if there's something going on in our community that we can support, even if it's not directly related to like books or learning, we want to be able to help. So for instance, like in Karina's perspective, she's really great with helping nonprofits and people who are in that world figure out where they can get money to do the cool stuff they're doing, right? So it's not necessarily like library the way we all think of it, but it's definitely part of helping our community like thrive and become the best entrepreneurs or learners or just healthy people that we can be.
Absolutely. So I'm looking here at guides and I see the first two are kids and teens. And I think it's so important to have resources for our children, especially during COVID. So just some quick thoughts on those there. Let me go back to that.
I'll say, so all of our branches, all 9 of them have youth or children's librarians. Most of them have adult services librarians, and I think about half have teen services librarians. So if you need assistance or want some individual attention specific to kiddos or for a specific age group, you can always go to your local branch or reach out and see if you can get some support that'll be specialized to the needs of that group. So if it's if it's kids, we're going to rely on our children's librarians to sort of make that connection. They also have really close connections to the local schools as well, and like childcare facilities, things like that. For teens, similar way. And then for adults, we're all sort of, I think we're all kind of generalists in terms of who we work with, because adult is really anything 18 and up. That's a long time.
And I see library how-to videos. Videos are definitely awesome. I remember when I first learned how to tie a bow tie, I had to watch a YouTube video over and over again. Now I can tie it without even being in the mirror. But most people can't tie a bow tie. Just kind of
those library how-to videos are made by real live Kitsap Regional Library librarians. And, if you're like me, watching a video, it can sometimes be more helpful than reading a lot of content. And they take you through things that, just like how to get your first live, you're stuck, how to reset your password, or, all kinds of, they're short, sweet, and to the point.
And then the last one is visit. So location and hours. I see curbside holds and pickup. What is that?
Yep. So we, at the very beginning of the pandemic, we were closed for a few months as we sort of pivoted and figured out how we could function in this new world that we're in. So we started off with curbside pickup, which is a way for people to search our catalog online. It's actually in the search bar directly above the visit section. So you can search for any books or movies or music or video games you want, and through our website, place a hold on it. That means put a request in, tied to your account. So what we would do is grab it off our shelf, check it in for you. It triggers the computer to say, oh, hey, so-and-so, your item is ready. So you would get a notification saying, hey, come pick up your item. We would set it aside for you. And for curbside, before we reopened to the public, we would literally, you'd make an appointment to come pick it up at a certain time, and we would just walk it out to your car, hand it off, and go back in. And so that was the way we functioned for some months. And we're still offering it because not everyone's ready to come back inside our buildings yet in person. whether that's because they're concerned about health risks, or if you're just a busy parent and you've got a car full of kids and you don't want to leave them alone, that's another thing. If you've got mobility issues,
Wow.
yeah.
So what's home delivery?
Oh, this is a fantastic program. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Karina, you want to take this?
Yeah, it's a great service that we provide to homebound patrons. So if you're in a situation where getting to the library is difficult for you, we have our mobile services division, and it's a fantastic staff of people that will provide readers advisory for you, and they will make regular visits to your home and bring you reading materials. There is an application process because we can only make it to so many homes per week. It's a route that we create, but we can, if you click on home delivery, there's an application in there, and you can get in contact with the fantastic folks there. They work out of our Sylvan Way branch, and you can learn more about it.
Wow, that is really fantastic. And then just quickly reserve a room.
Yeah, we've got, during the pandemic, like Priya said, there is limited meeting capacity at most of our branches, but we do have a few branches where you can reserve a room in advance. The Pulsebo branch is one of those. We do limit the number of people that can be in the room, again, due to COVID. But if you just click on reserve a room, there's not too many free meeting spaces left in the county. And, so check out, the options that you have there. And, yeah, the only caveat there is that it can't be for a for-profit event. It needs to just be for some folks who want to gather, or a nonprofit scenario.
Well, I will keep that in mind. Well, I know we went over a little bit. I had no idea that the library was this deep in resources and information and help. I already have a healthy respect for Kitsap Regional Library, but my appreciation and respect is even deeper now with more fuller understanding of all the things that you do. So, one, I want to give you an applause for all of your work and all of your efforts and really helping to sustain our community through the pandemic, because it is so very isolating. And it still is, right? And so everything from the curbside to deliveries, just really out of the box thinking and customer service and keeping people connected is tremendously huge. Kids outside reading. You're literally doing all the things, right? Helping with disinformation and research and man, I'm almost speechless, but that's really hard for me. I'm so
Thank you. Well, we also, I want to maybe leave this toward the end, is that we are open to ideas. So if there's something we're not doing yet, or if we're doing it in a way that doesn't quite work for you or your community or the people in your neighborhood, please always feel free to come let us know, or say hey, we really wish we had this service. We sort of do that in a way where if there's an item that we don't have in our collection, but you think we should, we'll take that into consideration and probably buy it so that other people can use it. But if there are, for instance,
well, we want to hear from you, and we don't necessarily, you are our advertising, Marwan. We don't have the luxury of advertising on NPR and letting everybody know about us. So, we want to hear from our communities. We just need your help getting the word out for that.
I will toot your horn as much and as often as you want me to. This is huge, and more people, one, need to know about it, and two, need to figure out how they can empower themselves to access it. And you guys are here at your different branches, and if all the librarians are like you, this can be very life-changing for adults and children. So, man, I just really want to thank you so much. I am going to give you the final words that you want to close us with.
Okay, so I'll say,
come see us at the library. Yay!
Yeah,
you can email us, you can call us, you can come into our buildings in person. We want to see you. Just connect with us.
Yeah, and on the hot topic of misinformation, disinformation, there's a lot out there. This stuff is hard for everyone. Come have a conversation with us. Talk about this stuff. Think about this stuff. The more we bring it into our daily lives, the less scary it gets.
Absolutely. So there is help out there. They stand willing, ready, and able to help you with whatever your needs are. Super powerful resource here in this county. So glad that the levy passed and all this good stuff is here. I hope that you get an onslaught of new people coming into the library to do a lot of cool things. Very special thank you to Karina Wood of the Postal Library and Priya Chari of the Downtown Library. Again, as I said, I hope that you will come back on and share more information on what you do, whether it's something singular or more generalized. But the library is doing a lot of things, and so well, it may seem antiquated, not at all. They are up with the times, and um, it's just better than ever. So I'm gonna try to stop geeking out, but I can't. Look at my cheeks. I mean, that's sincere. You know what I'm saying? That's honest. So it is what it is. I appreciate you both for coming on. Thank you so much. Um,
Thank
and
you for having us. We
Thank you.
appreciate you.
absolutely. We will be back at 2:00 with Brendan Smith and Tones Fitness, which is on Pacific. So tune in. We have another podcast at 4 and then at 5 p.m. I am R1 Cameron. This is the Conduit. Until next time.